We travel to the University of California Irvine to find out if purchasing an electric car is worth it these days. We meet with UCI's Dr. Jack Brouwer. Dr. Jack Brouwer is a professor of mechanical and aerospace engineering at the University of California Irvine. Dr. Brouwer is also the director of the university's renowned Clean Energy Institute. For years, Dr. Brouwer and UCI have been studying and deploying electric vehicles. So exactly how does an EV work? Sure, some folks these days are joining the EV craze and going electric, yet ask many of them, and they'll admit they have no idea what's powering their ride.
Many people don't know how an EV works. So in the simplest of terms, every EV has chemical energy storage on board. And then, through an electrochemical reaction, they take the chemical energy and make electrons flow. And the electrons then flow through an electric motor that provides power to the wheels. And that works by the electric motor having the electrons that are negatively charged create an electric field that pushes magnets around and around and around so that you can provide power to the wheels.
These days there are different types of electric vehicles, and many automakers are trying to capitalize on the EV enthusiasm. Seems the era of Tesla controlling the market, so to speak, is sort of a thing of the past. Today, automakers worldwide are building electric cars, minivans, sport utilities, trucks, and more. Several car companies have comprehensive business plans to electrify much of their inventory over the next decade. Some companies have announced goals for all electric vehicles within the next 5 years. However, this rapidly booming EV market could make these changes somewhat confusing for the average consumer. That's why Dr. Brouwer is giving this simple electric car tutorial. He knows a list of manufacturers producing electric vehicles can be overwhelming. Companies like Audi, BMW, Ford, GM, Hyundai Kia, Jaguar Land Rover, Jeep, Mazda, Mercedes, Mitsubishi, Nissan, Stellantis, Subaru, Toyota, Volkswagen, Volvo, the list goes on.
There are many types of electric vehicles. The most important types are a fuel cell electric vehicle, which is this vehicle you see over here that uses a hydrogen fuel cell electrochemical reaction to provide that power to the wheels. And these two here, the Tesla and the Scion, are battery electric vehicles. So they have the electrochemical reactions in the battery produce an electron flow that powers the motor, that puts the power to the wheels.
Some of the concern with electric vehicles is obviously the distance they can travel. Some motorists are worried they won't get to their destination many miles away on a battery charge. And while many electric vehicles do not get the range a gasoline-powered engine gets, Dr. Brouwer says the distance some of these EVs travel is worth noting.
Some are designed for shorter range, like this Scion EV, for about 50 miles of range, typically used for city driving or commutes. For a longer range vehicle, you could have this Tesla Model S. The modern models are getting over 300 miles. And then you have this fuel cell electric vehicle over here, which can get over 300 miles on a single fill. We expect there to be many additional models of battery electric and fuel cell electric vehicles on the market. As a matter of fact, you're seeing them being delivered by all the major OEMs. And these companies are delivering both battery electric vehicles and fuel cell electric vehicles, which both have zero emissions in their use. Now, why would we have a different range expected for a fuel cell vehicle compared to a battery electric zero emission vehicle? When you have to buy batteries, the power and energy of the batteries scale together. When you buy a fuel cell, you have a separate energy compartment, which is where you store the chemicals, the hydrogen, and a power compartment, which is the fuel cell itself. Separate power and energy scaling will make fuel cells a zero emissions option that is lighter weight for the same distance. And if it's lighter weight for the same distance, it can either go farther or carry more stuff. So this is the kind of thing that is a fundamental difference between a battery electric vehicle and a fuel cell electric vehicle.
A fuel cell car that runs on hydrogen. Sounds kind of interesting, so we decided to hit the streets with Dr. Brouwer and find out more. If these fuel cell vehicles are so great, why aren't there more of them on the road today, if any?
A fuel cell electric vehicle then requires refueling through hydrogen, and this is why hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are not as popular as battery electric vehicles. And that's because they don't have a very large fueling network, a whole bunch of fueling stations. There's only a few of them, and only in California right now. So it's not as popular, mainly because we don't have fueling infrastructure. And of course, it's not as convenient as a battery electric vehicle, which you can charge at home. Although the best charging of a battery electric vehicle would be in the middle of a day when the sun is shining and we have lots of solar power on the grid. So workplace charging would be better than charging at home at night.
And what about putting the pedal to the metal, 0 to 60, quarter mile, rev the exhaust, listen to the engine, or in this case, the quiet battery?
So I mentioned performance, and like all electric vehicles, this fuel cell electric vehicle has really nice performance characteristics. Great acceleration, great pickup from the start.
So now the billion-dollar question. These days, many argue it's the wealthy people, the coastal elites in California and New York, for example, who are purchasing expensive EVs. If that's the case, how do you convince folks throughout the U.S., middle America, rural America, working class, everyday neighborhoods where folks are struggling to save money and pay their bills? How do you explain to them that an electric vehicle is better than a cheaper and possibly more practical gasoline-powered vehicle? Say, for example, a mom who insists upon having a massive gas-guzzling 9-passenger SUV so she can shuttle the kids and their friends to school, the park, the movies. Or how do you convince some ranchers or farmers or off-roaders who insist they must have a 4-wheel drive gasoline-powered truck that they can take through mud and snow or over rocks and rough terrain when an EV possibly can't do all that just yet?
The fact of the matter is that battery electric and fuel cell electric vehicles are pretty expensive today in comparison to the lower priced gasoline vehicles. And as a result, it is mostly those people who have means, who can afford a luxurious car, that are buying battery electric vehicle and fuel cell electric vehicles. And this is very unfortunate. We fortunately are beginning to introduce programs that will incentivize and provide greater incentives for those who have less means, so that people who are not wealthy will have a greater incentive to buy an electric vehicle, and hopefully that will even the playing field somewhat. But more important than that is the advancement of the technology itself, so that we can actually make battery electric and fuel cell electric vehicles cheap, so that they are not only zero emissions, but even more affordable than a gasoline vehicle. So that if we can make battery electric vehicles cheaper than gasoline vehicles, at least it won't be a burden to those who have less means.